today. Today we are going to talk about the fat loss fix. And I wanted to do this for a couple of reasons. I think that number one, I know that most women struggle in this area. It is a topic that is very complex because we come from an industry where we really did it all dirty and for so long and body shamed and made women feel bad about their bodies and holding them to a certain standard for so long. And now we've swung the pendulum to the other side to where I feel like a lot of women do have a weight loss goal, but they're kind of not sure if it's okay to talk about it. And it is okay to have a weight loss goal. So I wanted to put this out first and foremost. It's okay to have a weight loss goal. That does not mean that you have an issue or a bad body image. And the other side of that is true in that you could have a six pack and still have poor body image. They are not correlated necessarily. And so it's really about figuring out what works best for you. But I want to make sure that I'm giving you the tools in order for you to be successful because number one, weight loss in general is typically misunderstood. And then you add this layer in of being able to lose weight in midlife and it gets even more complicated. So let me share my screen. We're going to go ahead and jump into this. So this is, make sure you can see this, the fat loss fix. This is specifically for women in midlife to help you drop that stubborn midlife belly fat. We're going to talk about why that happens and have a repeatable system that you can then rinse or repeat if you have more than 10 pounds to lose. You can basically take this system, drop the 10 pounds, and then rinse and repeat it. And for those of you who have been around me for a little bit, you know that I am on a personal goal right now to lose 10 pounds in 60 days. And I decided, you know what, if I can do it, I want to show you how to do it as well. And I think we're on day 28 and I'm at 5.5 pounds down and still just kind of rocking and rolling. So I'm pretty happy with those results. And I'm going to share with you exactly how I'm doing this so you can see how you can apply this as well. So first and foremost, I appreciate you being here. I know that it is an investment of your time to show up live. So just know that should you want to move forward with this, with the new program that is getting launched tomorrow, there is going to be a show up bonus at the end. So make sure that you hang with me. If you are new to my little community here, my name is Jen Vigil. I am a 52-year-old fitness and nutrition coach. I specialize in metabolic and hormone function. I actually really started to dive deep into this about 10 years ago when I personally started to experience that there was a shift in my physiology. Now, if you can see the picture down over here at the bottom right, the picture on the left is me in January of 2023. I have had, in the past 2 to 3 years, I've had 2 months that literally rocked my world. And in a 30-day period of time, I went from what you see on the right to what you see on the left. And it was pretty shocking to me as well, even as someone who specializes in metabolic and hormone function. And so just know that not only do I understand this as from a coach's perspective, I live through it as well. I am in perimenopause. I understand what that is like. And what it's like to go through that process. I'm at the tail end, so I'm hoping that some of the fluctuations are going away a bit, but I totally get it from both aspects. The other thing you should know about me is that if you look at the picture on the right, you may notice like I don't have a six pack. The picture on the right is pretty much where I'm at most of the time, give or take a few pounds, but that's pretty much me most of the time. I don't have a six pack. I don't care to have a six pack. If you look, you can kind of see my little love handles on the side. That's pretty much just because I will not do ultra restrictive diets. I don't believe in them anymore. I've been in the fitness industry for a really long time. I've done all of that stuff. And I just don't choose to live that way. So I live what is called a very moderation-based lifestyle. I have gone from being someone who was pretty strict paleo to gluten and dairy free to all kinds of restrictions to eventually just saying, you know what, like this is really hard to maneuver when you are living around other people. And I just don't want to live that way. I can't say that I'll never give up alcohol, but I don't have a desire to feel like I can't have it if I want it. And I feel like we live in a society right now where we're telling women in midlife that they need to cut out alcohol and coffee and carbs and cut out all these things. And it's just not true. Now, they are considerations and there's a way to do this, but I do believe in a moderation based lifestyle. And so that is my hopes to share with you today how to also do that if that's what you're looking to do. So here's what we're going to cover today. There's three things that you must have for successful weight loss in midlife. We're going to talk about what those three things are. And I'm going to dive into those a little bit more. I'm going to share with you the biggest mistakes that sabotage results and how you can avoid them. Then I'm going to explain my Lean Physique Ladder, which is a systematic step-by-step approach to sustainable results. And we'll talk about what the mistakes are and what led to this ladder. And then through this process, if you guys want to jump in and ask questions, you can build your 40 plus fat loss fix. We can workshop this. So if you have questions, you can jump in and ask them. And I'm happy to help answer those questions for you. Now, you're in the right place if you are a 40 plus woman who is frustrated that your waistline keeps growing, even if your habits haven't changed. And I hear this a lot from women where they're like, listen, like I'm not eating anymore. In fact, I'm eating a little bit less and I'm moving a little bit more, and yet my waistline keeps growing. Why? I'm going to explain why in a minute. You've tried things like intermittent fasting. You've tried keto. You've cut out sugar, carbs, alcohol. You've increased your movement. You're doing more workouts, but you just cannot get the scale to budge. You're in the right place if that's you. You feel like your metabolism is broken. I hear this a lot. It's not. It's just stalled, and we're going to get it going again. And you want results that you can sustain forever, that you can sustain without forever living in a deprivation or having to live in the gym. I love working out, but I don't have a desire to live in the gym in order to sustain my physique. So we're going to talk about that. So as we get started, here's what I want you to understand is that, why does this suddenly get so much harder when we go into midlife? And what happens is that our sex hormones, as we hit midlife, start to decline. Estrogen starts to fluctuate. So she's kind of going up and down. She's all over the place. And then progesterone and testosterone start to drop. And what this means is that you will become more stress sensitive and less insulin sensitive. So this is going to affect your stress hormones like cortisol. It's also going to affect insulin. So let's break this down, because these two hormones specifically have the ability to put your body either in a fat storage position or a fat burning situation. And so we want to make sure that they are within their circadian rhythm and they're working optimally. So let's start with the stress hormones. If you think of your metabolism instead of just calories in and calories out, I want you to think of it like an energy system or a stress barometer. And so what it's doing is it's managing energy that you're not really thinking about, energy that's required for your basic systems in your body. And so it's going, okay, we have enough energy to send to this. We have enough energy to send to digestion. We have enough energy to send to your thyroid. We have enough energy for these different systems, right? And so it's monitoring that. But when the stress starts to go up against your physiology, that means that it needs that energy to be able to manage and still be able to keep all of those systems functioning. What it will not do is then turn around and burn when it's managing stress. So if your body is at an elevated stress situation, it's not going to burn fat. It doesn't mean that you can never be stressed. Your body actually needs to be stressed sometimes. It is when it's in a chronically elevated stress state, it'll probably stay in a fat storage mode versus fat burning. The other part of that is the insulin sensitivity. So what happens is when you eat food, that food is turned into glucose basically. And depending upon what type and how much you eat, that determines how much glucose, which then determines how much insulin is then released. Insulin is the messenger. So insulin is released, and then what its job is to knock on the doors of the cells and say, open up, take this in and use it. Well, as estrogen drops off, your cells become resistant to that message. So the tissue on the other side of that cell is not getting the insulin that it needs. Meanwhile, the insulin glucose is hanging out over here and it doesn't know what to do. So it will hang out and circulate for a while. And if it doesn't get used, it will then get stored. And the only place your body can store it is as fat. And it will usually be around your midsection. Meanwhile, on the other side over here, your cells will then send a message back up to your brain and go, hey, we need insulin. So your body will release more insulin. And so you get all of this insulin being released on this side of the cell and none of it really being going through to the other side to be utilized. So it gets stored as fat. This is why you'll notice an increase in your waistline. So that is why it is harder in midlife. Now imagine we take metabolism 101. The way that this works is both under eating and overeating are stress to your metabolic system. And when your metabolism is under stress, it's going to store fat, not burn it. And calorie restriction increases stress. So if we're in midlife and then we are restricting calories, we're piling on more stress. Workouts are also a form of stress to your physiology. So you're cutting calories and adding more workouts just adds more stress to the equation. Even though you're thinking in terms of calories, I got to burn calories, your metabolism is thinking in terms of stress and energy, and it's saying, we have too many other fires. We have other things that we need to be focused on. Fat burning is not one of them. And so it will not burn fat for you. And so that is why it starts to get so much harder in midlife. So here are a couple of the mistakes that I see. And these are kind of the broader mistakes that you'll see. The first one is too extreme of options that create what is known as a boomerang effect. So things like cutting out sugar, cutting out alcohol, cutting calories too low. What that does is the metabolism doesn't like it when you are in a deficit. Your metabolism actually doesn't like that. And so if it's a small deficit, it won't do anything major. But if the deficit starts to grow too big, it deems that as dangerous, right? And so when you cut calories, it will release hunger hormones. It will release hormones that make you tired in order to close that gap back up. Well, the boomerang effect is that the more you swing into restriction, the more you will rebound into overeating at night, weekends, and social events. So think about this for a second. If you've ever tried to cut calories out, I get this all the time. Women will tell me, I'm really good during the day, and then at night, I just lose my mind. And then when I look at what they're eating, it's because they're not getting enough calories during the day. So their body's like, oh, I'm hungry. So then they overeat at dinner. So they'll have like 200 calories maybe for breakfast, and then maybe 300 calories for lunch. And then dinner's like 1,200 calories, right? It's because that's that boomerang effect. Same thing, overeating over on the weekends, right? If I'm really, really good Monday through Thursday and I feel super deprived, the more deprived I feel, the higher the boomerang effect goes into the weekends. Same thing happens with fasting, right? So a lot of times women think, well, I'll just intermittent fast. Number one, fasting is stress. Remember, when we reduce calories for too long, that is stress to the system. But when we fast, what happens for most people, not all, is that they then boomerang into overeating. And so they don't eat and they restrict their window, but then they eat two meals that are much bigger in calories, higher in calories, more fat. It's harder for their body to digest it. And so even though they're fasting to help with their blood sugar, when you overeat that amount of food, you're messing with your blood sugar anyway. So it doesn't actually work. And then blood sugar goes up, and now your blood sugar is doing this, right? So that is the boomerang. The more you restrict on this side, the higher it's going to swing over here. Same thing with excessive workouts and cardio. What you need to know is that working out, because it's a stress, signals the metabolism to release hunger hormones and decrease energy. So the more you go into exercise, the more hunger hormones are going to get released, the more you're going to get tired. And if you've ever really paid attention when you've dieted or gone into any kind of deficit, you'll notice I've noticed that I get a little bit more hungry, and I notice that I'm getting a little bit more tired. That is your metabolism's automatic system kicking in to get you to stop doing what you're doing, basically. So those are that's the first one. The big mistake is that big extreme option. The second thing that I see, and most people don't realize this is happening, is that they're failing to progress whatever strategy it is that they're doing. They're not progressing that. So, metabolism 102 is that the metabolism is highly adaptable. So, your approach must continually progress or change. So in order to continue to get results. So think about it. If you start a program, you start doing something and it maybe you lose 5 pounds, maybe you lose 6 pounds or whatever. Then all of a sudden you hit that dreaded plateau. That's because your metabolism has adapted. It's like, okay, I see what you did here, but I've got to make sure that all these systems are working. So let me get very, very efficient. And it will do that by down regulating and slowing down actually, or pulling systems. It'll pull what the energy that it's sending to, maybe it doesn't send as much energy to digestion. Maybe it doesn't send as much energy to your thyroid, right? So it's adapting to that. And if you don't shift your strategy to get it to force it to adapt again, that is where you're going to stall. So think about it. I like to use the analogy K through 12th grade, kindergarten through 12th grade. In kindergarten, you learn your basics, your ABCs, your 1, 2, 3s. And then you take those basics and in first grade, you build on them. So now it's CAT is CAT and 1 + 1 is 2. And then you get to second grade. And now you're doing maybe multiplication and division and sentences and paragraphs. Like you get the idea, like you have to progress it. Your metabolism works the same way. So you have to be able to progress your program or strategy that you're using by layering in strategies so that you can then slowly spread that gap. And I'm going to give you examples of how you can do that. The 3 things that you must have, let me check to make sure that there's no questions so far. Nope. Okay. So the 3 things you must have for successful weight loss or fat loss, and those are slightly different. If you guys have questions about that, let me know. The 3 things you have to have is hormonal balance. I should put that in quotes. Just know that hormones do shift. They don't have they're not stagnant. They don't stay in one place, but we want them working optimally in your system and with each other. So we want hormonal balance. We want a small, manageable caloric deficit. If it's not manageable, you're just going to swing into overeating. So we need a small, manageable caloric deficit. And then we need a sustainable system. And the reason that I capitalize that is that we don't want it to be, this is where people get confused with sustainable. It doesn't mean sustainable, I'm going to do the same thing forever. It is a system that is sustainable that you can complete throughout, even though it is dynamic and it will shift a little bit. It's sustainable in that you're not swinging. We don't want to swing. We just want to shift a little bit and a little bit. And that's why I call it the ladder, the Lean Physique Ladder, because we want to move from rung to rung. We don't want to skip big steps. Hopefully that makes sense. So here's how we accomplish all 3 of those. Is that Lean Physique Ladder. I'm sure this is picking up. Sometimes it doesn't move. Oh. It's not going to show it to me. Hopefully, if you guys can't see this, let me know. Sometimes it pauses. Okay, so the Lean Physique Ladder. It is the 4 phases to sustainable weight and fat loss. The first phase is the hormonal reset. Now, a lot of women, in terms of when they're in midlife, think in terms of estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, right? Those are your sex hormones. They are not the only hormones in your body, but they are the ones that most women think of because they're the ones that all of a sudden you notice the most as you start to go through midlife. We're not going to deal with those. You can, but the ones that are going to have the biggest effect on your body's ability to burn fat are actually not those hormones. They are leptin and ghrelin, which have to do with hunger. So ghrelin, hunger. Leptin is satiation, how satiated you are. And then insulin and cortisol. These are the 4 hormones that will have the biggest impact on your body's ability to lose fat and weight. And how we manage them is through the things that you see here. Number 1 is sleep. Sleep is the thing that I will always solve for first. If I have a client that comes in and is just like, my sleep is very disrupted, it's always going to be the thing that I solve for first because sleep affects everything else. I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but if you're not getting good sleep, you'll eat, you'll crave, your body's basically seeking comfort. And just so you know, carbs lower cortisol. Side note, if you wake up in the middle of the night, like I did at 2 a.m. last night and unable to go back to sleep, I got up and I went in the kitchen and I ate half a banana because carbs lower cortisol. Couldn't get my brain to stop. I was just like, okay, I've done my breathing. I tried to relax my body. I can't get this to happen. Went and had a half a banana and then came back to bed and probably was asleep within 10-15 minutes. Right? So it calms the nervous system. So when you are not getting enough sleep or recovery, what happens is your body, it's not hitting enough recovery. Your systems aren't working optimally and it's seeking comfort. So you'll notice that you snack more, you'll eat more carbs, it'll affect your digestion. So a lot of times you'll notice maybe you're more bloated, right? It affects every other system in your body. So we always want to solve for that first. When it comes to sleep, things that you can do to help sleep. Number one, get as much morning light first thing as you can. Now, if you are like, I get up in the dark and I head to the office, or I get up and it's this, we're about to hit this in Seattle where it's just dark all the time, you can get one of those, what I call them happy lights, right? Where first thing in the morning, if it's super dark outside and I have to get things going, I will sit in front of a light for 15-20 minutes while I'm getting ready. So I'm getting light in my eyes because that actually sets your circadian rhythm for the rest of the day. And then it's just a matter of avoiding caffeine in the afternoon. It's allowing your cortisol to come back down. It is having a good nighttime routine. There are supplements that you can take, ones that I would consider looking into. My favorite is magnesium glycinate. You can take a standard dosage of anywhere from 200 to 500 milligrams. Glycinate is a calmer of your nervous system, so I take that every night. There is another supplement called Cortisol Manager, which is also, it helps lower cortisol. I will tell you that the standard dose on that is 2 of their tablets. I would only start with 1. It has something called L-theanine in it. L-theanine is good at helping you get almost like it'll send you into a really deep recovery state. But what can happen is then it'll pull you back out because you hit it so deep that it'll pull you back out. And sometimes that's 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. You're like, I'm wide awake. It's because you hit too deep and now it's pulling you back out. So I would start with 1. So those are probably my 2 favorite, but really it's just about establishing the routine of that. The second thing that affects these 4 hormones is your meals, and that's going to be the timing and the type of food that you're actually eating. Now, I am a big fan of frequent meals throughout the day because number one, they're easier to digest, but frequent meals throughout the day also keep your blood sugar more stable. And the name of the game is keeping blood sugar stable. We don't want big spikes and big dips. Right. So a lot of times they'll tell you like, don't eat for a certain amount of time because it allows your digestive system to take a break. Okay, well, that's called sleep. That's what you're doing while you're sleeping. But during the day, we want those blood sugar levels pretty even. So I actually eat about 5 times a day. So I have my breakfast, lunch, dinner, and then have a couple snacks. So I literally am eating about every 3 hours and I don't have to set my watch to it. My body is like, hey, time to eat. And you'll notice that you just eat smaller meals, which are easier to digest. It's easier for your system to actually digest those. The nutrition big 3 are going to be water, protein, and fiber. These are the things that are going to have the biggest impact on your satiation and blood sugar. And those are what we're looking at. So water is very satiating. If you don't get enough hydration, your brain will release hunger hormones because it's smart enough to know that you can actually get water from food. So a lot of times and I noticed this even today, I noticed like, oh, like, why am I snacky? Why am I hungry? Part of it was because I didn't sleep well. And part of it was because I realized I wasn't drinking my water today. Or drinking enough water. So we want to make sure that we're getting enough water so that our systems can actually work, and it will also help satiate you. Protein does a lot of things. Number one, protein is going to help stabilize your blood sugar. Both protein and fiber are going to help stabilize blood sugar. So whatever you eat, you're not going to get a spike. Anytime you get a spike, you're going to get a fall off, right? So protein is going to do that. It's going to help protect the muscle that you do have when you do lose weight. Protein is going to boost your metabolism because it is harder to digest. So that actually gives you a boost in your metabolic system. And the biggest reason that to get enough fiber, and all of my clients say this once they actually get it, is that protein is the most satiating nutrient. If you want to learn how to live a moderation based lifestyle where nothing is off the table and you can literally eat anything you want, but learn how to not overeat it, protein is the magic pill that you've always been looking for. Because it's so satiating. When you get adequate amounts, you'll be able to pick at the cookie. You'll be able to have half a cookie or half a muffin or half a Danish or whatever, enjoy a little bit of it and be like, yeah, I'm good. I don't need it anymore. You'll stop overeating all of the extra treats because you're already very, very satiated. So that's where I would focus on with my meals is go, okay, let me make sure I'm eating frequently throughout the day, making sure that I'm getting enough protein and fiber in there first, and then you build around that. Stress management, right? We know that there's stress all around us. I actually was just talking to one of my clients about this, is that she she just went through a couple months where it was just like literally every week something kept happening. She goes, but what's interesting about that is that I feel like over the last 2 months, I've just gotten better at managing it, where these same things would have knocked me out 6 months ago. Now it's not that I am dismissing them, I'm just managing it better. It is a skill that you can learn. We all have stress, but you don't want it to where you're feeling chronically stressed all the time. Stress management can be anything from, yes, getting your nails done and spa days and all of that good stuff. But stress management for me means that during the day, I stop what I'm doing and I do some breathing exercises, right? Stress management means that before I go to bed, I read my, romance novels because they turn my brain off. Stress management means that I pet my kitty when she comes and rubs up against me, because animals are very good for reducing stress, right? Like, you want to find the practices that work for you. Yes, you can do meditation. Yes, you can do breathing things. You can do foam rolling and stretching and things like that. Anything that helps to calm your nervous system. You don't have to just sit feeling like you can't be around stress at all. You just want to find the practices that help calm your nervous system quickly so that you're not in a chronically elevated stress situation. Leisure walking is a great way to do a hormonal reset. Leisure walking is great because leisure walking, not cardio walking or walking at a quick clip, I get that a lot. It's not to burn calories. Leisure walking is about lowering stress hormones, which it will do. So you're just leisurely walking. Outdoor is ideal. And leisure walking is one of the fastest ways to get your cells to become more insulin sensitive. So remember, we talked about the cells being insulin resistant. Well, through leisure walking, what that does, and studies have shown this for a really long time, that leisure walking helps those cells become more sensitive so they'll pull that insulin in and actually use it. So plenty of leisure walking. And I know a lot of times people will talk about the 8 to 10K steps, which movement is good, but make sure that you're still getting walks in, not just walking around your house. Digestion is important. If we're not digesting food, that a lot of that bloat that you're feeling is just a lack of digestion. You should be having a bowel movement every single day. If you are not, that is problematic. That is how we get rid of waste. It is how we get rid of hormones that we have metabolized that are just hanging out. That's kind of important too. So good rule of thumb for digestion is making sure that you are getting adequate water. A good target is like half your body weight in ounces, and then kind of adjust it based on activity level, whether you sweat a lot, your environment, you can kind of go with that. Do not drink a lot of water with your meals because the water will wash away your natural digestive enzymes. So we want to make sure that we're not doing that. You can put lemon juice in your water. I put lemon juice in my water first thing in the morning. That lemon juice will help and aid in digestion. You can use, if you get acid reflux, one of my favorite tools for that is aloe vera juice. not aloe vera gel. I actually had a client try and swallow that once. So you want aloe vera juice. You can take anywhere from 2 to 6 ounces. Anytime I start to get a little bit of reflux, usually from wine, particularly red wine, is before I go to bed, I'll just do like 2 to 4 ounces of it, and it just cools everything down and kind of helps with digestion there. What happens in midlife is that our bodies just stop producing as many digestive enzymes to help break food down. So you can also just get a digestive enzyme to take with your meals. I don't take it with all of my meals, but I do take it probably once or twice a day. I do take it with probably half my meals, because we just don't have the digestive enzymes to break down food the way that we used to. So those are some kind of easy, and then just chew your food, right? Just make sure that you're chewing your food and you're not like racing around, like gobbling food up as you go. Rest and digest. Your body needs to be in a calm state in order to digest fully. So those are ways that you can keep the digestion going, which is also going to help with the hormones. The goal really is to, in this stage, to lower inflammation in your system and increase metabolic efficiency. So remember, the metabolism is an energy stress barometer, and it's deciding where to spend or where to give energy. We want it to be very efficient in where it's sending that energy. And when we do that in this phase, you will notice that your waistline gets smaller and your energy levels start to skyrocket, or at the very least start to stabilize, where you're like, oh, like I feel like I can think again. I have the energy to get things done throughout the day. And so when we're looking at, and I've had people ask me like, hey, do you really think it's realistic that women in midlife can drop 10 pounds in 60 days? And my answer is yes, because the reality is for most women, you'll lose 2 to 3 pounds right off the bat if you do this. Simply by getting your hormones reset and digesting food, you can easily lose 2 to 3 pounds right off the bat. It's just water and inflammation and lack of digestion, right? So that happens actually pretty quickly. Now the goal is then to keep the hormones fairly balanced while we move to that next phase. Which is phase 2. This is the cut or the deficit, if you will. So what you want to do is, oh, I see a question. Hold on. Oh, there we go. How can, hold on, that thing's popping up. How can you tell when and if your hormones are reset? That's a great question. So I use a tool that I learned from someone 10 years ago that I started. He's a mentor of mine. His name is Dr. Jade Tita. And he uses Is Your Schmeck in Check? So you can write these down. S is for sleep. H is for hunger. M is for mood. E is for energy. C is for cravings. And then add a D on there for digestion. And so this is a tool that I use all the time to kind of check in where I'm at. And I have my clients use this tool as well. And all you have to do is write these out and be like, okay, sleep. Let me rate this on a scale from 1 to 5. A 1 means it's garbage. Like I have a hard time falling asleep. I can't stay asleep. When I can't get back to sleep, and I wake up every morning exhausted. Like that's a 1. A 5 is I go to sleep fine. Like within 5-10 minutes, I'm asleep. I don't have a problem going to sleep. I generally speaking sleep through the night. I might wake up just because I have to go to the bathroom or the cat wakes me up or something. But I can go back to sleep. And generally speaking, I wake up rested. That would be a 5. So you rate it 1 through 5. And then you go through all of the other ones and do the same thing, right? So let's say hunger, right? A 1 is like, oh my God, I'm hungry all the time. Like I'm a bear. Like I feel like I eat, and then an hour later I'm like, I need to eat again, right? Like that's a 1. I feel like I just can't get enough. A 5 doesn't mean that you never get hungry. It just means that you're not like hungry between meals. Like you get hungry like, before a mealtime, but you don't notice that you're just hungry all the time. Rate that 1 to 5. Go through all of the ones that I listed, and how you'll know that you're close to that reset is all of those should be a 4 or 5. Then you know you're pretty balanced. Now, how we keep them there is anytime one of those starts to get off, You go, all right, so let's say that your sleep and your cravings are at a 2 or 3. You guys remember which one you saw first? I just said it. If I gotta solve them because I want to get them both to a 4 or 5. How do I get my sleep and my cravings to a 4 or 5? Any guesses? I'm going to solve for sleep first. This is what I said. When I have clients that come to me and I see that those are off, if I see that sleep is one of the markers that is off, it is the one I will always solve for first, because if I solve for sleep, generally speaking, those other ones are going to fall in line. The cravings will start to balance back out. The hunger will start to balance back out. If my sleep is at a 4 or 5 and then another one is off, then I'll solve for that. But it's usually a sleep that I'll solve for first. That was a good question. Thank you for asking. Did that help? Let me know if it didn't. Um, hello, Chloe. So here's how we go into the deficit. Make sure there's nothing there. Okay. What I did and what I recommend you do is you take your little tracker, right? And you over time figure out what your average calories that it's saying you're burning per day is. You don't want one day. So what I did is I had been paying attention for several weeks, and what I came to an average, you're very welcome, was that I average about 2,700 calories burning per day. I also had been logging my food for a while, so I knew that those numbers in maintenance were pretty similar, that I was eating again, average. Some days it was 2,500, some days it was 3,200, but it averaged to about 2,700. So that's why I was at maintenance. So I knew that I needed to create a deficit, and I started with 200 calories. At 2,500, I only went 200 calories because I didn't want to be hungry. I didn't want to push that. I wanted to start small and see how it worked. So and still am at 2,500 calories in terms of intake. Now, what you may have to do is look at your tracker, and I recommend you do some logging for a while and see where you end up. If you have done a lot of dieting before, and let's say that your tracker's saying you're burning 2,200, but then you start logging and you notice you're logging at 1,700, but you're not losing any weight, that's okay. It just means that your metabolism has adapted. And so you may need to cut from the 1,700. So you would cut down to 1,500. Start small. Then you're going to surf uncomfortableness. And what that means is we're not looking for, I'm starving all the time, I'm miserable, I'm just trying to make it to my next meal. You just notice that you just got a little edge of hunger. You notice that I noticed this I think it was the first day I was okay. By day 2 or 3, I noticed that I was starting to get tired. That just means it's working. It means that your body is noticing that it's not getting as many calories as it used to, and it hasn't figured out what to do with that yet. It will adapt. And how you do this, and what I did, is I took my 2,500 calories and I literally mapped this out in my FitnessPal. I was like, okay, this is what I eat for breakfast. This is what I eat for lunch. Here's my snacks. I made sure that I hit my protein goal first, which a good rule of thumb is 1 gram of protein per goal body weight. If that is way higher than what you've been eating, which it probably is, I would start with 100 to 120 grams. Let your digestive system catch up first, and then inch it a little bit higher. You're going to want to be 1 gram per body weight, or another way to do it is 25 to 30% of your total calories. My goal is 175 grams, and I've been averaging like 190. So if I can eat that much protein, you can get to 120. I promise. It's not that hard. It's only hard because you haven't done it. So I built my protein in. I made sure that I was getting enough starch for my energy levels. I made sure that I was getting vegetables in a couple of times per day. I made sure that I was hitting my fiber. And then I made sure, and you guys can see it here, that I had enough calories left over that I could work in some bullshit calories. Bullshit calories are the cookie, the bagel, like whatever your jam is. I'm a pastry girl. I like cookies. I like cake. I like pastries. I like sweets. right? And I don't need a lot of it, just a little bit will do. But if I told myself I couldn't have any of it, I would crave it even more. Me being able to have a cookie or two, I've had two today, it's in my plan. I'm not going over. I'm still hitting protein. I'm still hitting fiber. I'm still hitting my water. I'm still hitting all of those markers. And because I'm hitting those things, I can have a cookie or two and I'm fine. Usually by evening, I don't even want them anymore. I'm fine. I have my little fix and I move on. And that's how you keep yourself from swinging into overindulgence, because literally nothing is off the table. I do the same thing on weekends. If I know that I'm going to drink alcohol, I just make sure the rest of the day that I keep things in check so that I have enough room to be able to have the things that I want. And I don't ever feel deprived. How much fiber is a good goal? Also a good question. Everybody's going to be a little bit different based on where you're at, but I would say low end is going to be 20, 25 grams per day. And then high end is probably 40 to 45. Again, that's going to be based on your digestive tract and how well your gut health is. But you do want to get a good mix of fiber. So when you're looking at fiber, and where most people struggle with fiber is that they think in terms of just vegetables. If you're just doing vegetables for fiber, you're going to have a hard time hitting 20 to 25, because it has like 2, 3 grams of fiber. Like that's a lot of vegetables to get to 20, 25. So you want things that are both grain based, rice, potatoes, flour, things like that. You don't need a lot of it. Beans, avocados have a good amount of fiber in them, plus your vegetables and your fruit, and you should be able to hit it. I hit 35 to 40, 45 every day, and I don't eat like a lot of bread. So it's not that hard once you get used to it. Some considerations to talk about. We'll talk about tracking food here in a little bit. I know that a lot of women do not like to track food. They're like, I don't want to track. It takes too much time. I'm going to give you a little story in terms of how well this works. I have been following a woman on social media who is, I want to say she's like late 40s. She looks good, but she is also going through, she's openly sharing her fat loss experience. And so her goal, I think, was to lose like 12 pounds, and she gave herself 90 days, something like that. So a little bit slower. This is a woman who has competed on stage multiple times throughout her life. Not only has she competed herself, she has a business where she helps other women compete on stage. So when we're talking in terms of being able to get really lean, this woman, I think we can agree, knows macros, right? She decided not to track her food. She wanted to just be able to eyeball it. She thought she could do well enough doing it. She hasn't lost any weight. And she knows what she's doing. Here is my pitch on tracking food. I don't like to track food either. It is not a lifestyle that I want to do. But I can tell you, with every client that's ever came to me, even clients that have said macros didn't work for me, when I have them start logging, all of a sudden they're like, oh, yeah, you're right. Like, I'm not tracking this. I'm not tracking that. I didn't pay attention to this. It's always very educational. And even if you only do it for 30 days, you will learn about yourself. I have never seen anybody be able to intuitively eat and lose weight without having tracked food accurately first. So that's the first thing. Second thing to consider is weekends, social events, and holidays. Now, while you are going to have these crop up, obviously, you're going to have weekends, some holidays, some social events. I would recommend that you plan the periods of time when you're going to go into a deficit around that. Like, don't pick when you know that you're going to be out of town for, like, if you're going, like we're going to Italy in November, I'm not going to be in a deficit when we go. I'm not going to eat my face off, but I'm also not going to be in a deficit. So you want to pick them to where it's like, okay, I only have like one long weekend, or a couple of events that I can maneuver. Pick those and consider those when you're figuring out when you want to go into your deficit. Things to watch that can throw you off and pull you out of a deficit. The number one thing that I see is way too high of fat intake. Women have been told that you can eat healthy fats. Avocados are healthy, nuts are healthy, whole eggs are healthy. Like, yes, that's all true. However, fat has has more than double the amount of calories per gram than carbs and protein. It has 9 calories for every gram, where carbs and protein only have 4. So a very small amount of fat can send you over. So when you're not tracking butter, peanut butter, oils, like all of that, and I can tell you as someone who is tracking everything she's eating, I'm not adding any excess fat to my nutrition, and I am at 30% fat just from protein. And I choose mostly very lean proteins. I don't have whole eggs very often. I do egg whites, I do chicken, I do ground turkey. I don't add a lot of fat, and I'm still at 30%. And most of the women who come to me, when I look at it, they're like at 40, 50%, and they're not even tracking everything. It is sending you over in your calories. So watch your fat intake. Be very discerning with your fat when you are in a deficit, not necessarily maintenance, but when you are in a deficit. Watch the alcohol, right? So because alcohol, number one, people think in terms of alcohol and the sugars. It's not even the sugars in the alcohol. It's that, number one, it does mess with your hormone levels. And it does mess with those hormone levels longer when you are in midlife. But alcohol by nature, you will just end up eating more because it does lower your inhibitions, which means that, oh, I have a little bit of alcohol, let me snack on some stuff. That's going to happen. So you have to watch the amount of alcohol that you're taking in. I'm currently at 2 to 3 drinks per week. That's kind of where I'm maxed out, and I'm comfortable with that. And I'm still losing weight, and I'm doing fine with that. Anything more than that, you're really pushing it. Things to watch, your weight fluctuations on the weekend. I see this a lot where women will come to me like, I'm just frustrated, I'm not losing any weight. And when I look at it and have them track their weight every day, it's like it starts to come down, starts to come down, starts to come down. And then on Friday, it starts to go up. And then on Monday, it's up. And they're back over to where they start. And I'm like, it's because you need to figure out how to maneuver your weekends. We have to figure out how to be in a deficit on the weekend. And one of the things I always tell my clients is like, listen, if you're going to be in a deficit, be in a deficit. And that means weekends, right? The worst thing in the world you could do is not work out, not move, and eat more. And that's what most people do on the weekends. So it's like, oh, I got to move more. So for me, I do probably eat a little bit more on the weekends, not a lot, but a little. I also move more, right? So you got to balance your numbers and pay attention to your fluctuations. Create a detective mindset instead of one that's so critical. I like to say be clinical versus critical. All of the data, the number on the scale, it's just data. Like it's not a reflection of you as a person. It doesn't mean that you're worthless and you can't get your shit together. It's a number on the scale, and it can give you feedback if you learn to look at it that way. The big impact actions that you really want to focus on during the cut is making sure that you nail your macros and you focus on movement over exercise. So here is how I laid this out. When I started my first week being in my deficit, all I focused on was hitting my macros and walking an hour every single day. Because walking, I knew would increase my hunger hormones, and I knew it was going to lower my stress hormones. It was going to make me more insulin sensitive, so I could manage my macros. And I did that for probably a week and a half. And then, as I did that, I layered in a little bit of strength training. And it was like minimal compared to what I normally do. Because I knew that the strength training would make me hungry. And if I'm hungry, I'm going to have a harder time hitting my macros. So you layer it in a little bit at a time. But I would always recommend starting with nailing your macros and just your leisure walking first, and get those down first. Then we hit the plateau blaster, right? We're going to force the metabolism to continually adapt. We're going to take that gap and we're going to slowly spread it over time. And we're going to do that with your calories, right? So this is both your intake and what you're burning off, your expenditure, right? This time frame is going to be highly individual. Now, the more weight that you have to lose, the longer it will take for your metabolism to adapt. I have 10 pounds to lose. My metabolism adapts real fast, right? So the longer you've been doing this, right? Like if you lift weights, if your metabolism is already really highly adaptive, you'll have to flip things over pretty quickly. I am flipping things over every single week. I'm doing something slightly different. I'll explain a little bit about what I've done. But you can do this in two different ways. Spread the gap. You can either decrease your calories slash shift your macros. And one way that, well, the other way is you can increase your activity. So if we're going to look at decreasing your caloric intake, double check real quick. The way that I would do that is you could look at cutting your calories 100 a day. It's not a lot. It's just a little, right? So it's like, okay, I was eating this, and we cut it by 100. You could also toggle your carbs and fats. So let's say you don't want to cut calories, but you want to see how your body is processing the energy source that it gets. You can change or shift your carb fat ratio. And this is going to be based on your activity level and your insulin sensitivity. And here's what this means. If you are someone who has a hard time getting that just doing that daily walk is a hard thing for you, then we probably don't need to be going higher carb. We probably want to go lower carb, not non-existent, but lower carb, a little bit higher fat, but just make sure that you're paying attention to how much fat you're actually getting. If you have someone you know that you have glucose, insulin, when you get your labs back, if they're like, hey, you're borderline diabetic, right? You may have an insulin resistance issue. You may not be able to process those carbs as energy as well. So you may want to go a little bit more carbs. But if you are someone like me, who I'm super active on a regular basis, I can process more carbs because my body's just going to use that as energy. So that will change. And you can use that in order to get your body to have to force it to use a different energy source. So one of the things that I did is on the days that I'm not working out, I have lowered my carbs just a little bit and I go a little bit higher fat. It's a small little toggle, right? You can also toggle your intake based on your activity. This is the other thing that I've done as I've layered things in, is that on the days that I don't lift weights and I take long walks, I'll take my calories down just a little bit more. And on the days that I'm lifting weights, I eat just a little bit more. So I'm toggling that a little bit. And my weight is reflective of that. On the days that I'm walking and I eat a little bit less, the scale will go down. On the days that I lift weights and I eat a little bit more, it'll stay stable, right? So those are ways that you can toggle it. The other is that you can increase activity. I had an interesting conversation with one of my clients today, and she's at that point, right? So she's been doing really well, I want to say for 2 months, right? Really consistent weight loss. And then over the last 3 weeks, she's still nailing everything and she's feeling good. She's kind of hit that little bump where it's like, I don't think she's going to move anymore. And I said, okay, we've got two options. We can either take your calories down a little bit more, or we can increase your activity level, which is easier for you. And she's like, cutting my calories a little bit more. And I'm like, we took her down by 100. And when we looked at it, she's like, actually, this isn't even hard. Right? Like cutting 100 calories from her intake. She was like, well, I already, like, my breakfast kind of leaves me a little bit full, so I can shave a little bit off there, and I can shave a little bit off my lunch, and I'll be fine. 100 calories is like nothing, right? When you shave it down just a little bit, probably won't even notice it. So you figure out which one is easier. For me, I don't like to eat less. I don't like to diet, right? So I would prefer just increasing my activity. And that's where most of my, do I have a good food tracker? I just use MyFitnessPal, honestly. I like to keep it simple, and it syncs with the app that I use with clients. So I just use that. There are other ones out there, but that's what I use. So what I do is I increase my activity, and here's how I personally have done that, is I've stayed pretty close to the 2,500 calories. I've shifted it just a little bit. But I started with just leisure walking the first week. And then by the second week, I started doing very, very light resistance training. So I kind of layered that in, right? And then the next week and I knew this would happen because I like to lift. By the next week, I was like, oh, okay, let me lift a little bit heavier. And I changed my workouts. But what happened is I did it too quickly. And I went from doing very light total body workouts, like 20 minutes, to thinking I could jump back into split body workouts and lifting heavy. And was it last Tuesday? Yeah, it was last Tuesday. I noticed by Tuesday night, like I was just like, I want pizza. and I needed pizza and I was hungry and craving. And so I went and got pizza, I had wine and I had a little bit of pastry and I'm like, okay, like you need to back off of this. So I toggled back down. I was like, all right, like just toggle it back down. I chilled out on the resistance training. But what I have done is on the days that I lift the lighter, I'll do like 10 to 12 minutes of little sprints, right? To where it's like before I lift, I'll do 10 to 12 minutes of little running sprints. It's not crazy, but it's just a small little shift to where I'm not noticing it. And I'm fine this week. I've been focused on walking, a little bit of light training, a few of the little cardio sprints in there, and I'm fine. And I'm still managing my macros. So these are different ways that you can increase the activity. You can add something called LISS cardio, which is zone 2 cardio. So again, you're just slowly, incrementally increasing that gap to where you're still burning. And then that moves us into the sustainable weight loss, the moving into maintenance. Now, here's the mistake that most people make is that once they get to the bottom, number one, they try to keep dieting for too long and then they swing into overindulgence. There's a point where you're going to be like, okay, I'm done here. I need a break. And what you need to do is instead of swinging back to what you were doing before is slowly work your way back out of it. The goal is to do it slow enough that you don't gain the weight back. Now, a lot of women coaches, I should say, that are used to doing reverses will sometimes take women too far in their calories. And most women in midlife do not recover well from that, where they're like, oh, you know, you gained 8 pounds, but you need that in order to go back into your next deficit. And that's true if you're a bodybuilder. But if you're a woman in midlife who is not trying to be a bodybuilder and is not trying to have a six pack and is just trying to maneuver all of this stuff, that 8 pounds is going to be hard to get back off, right? So we want to do it in a way to where we can maintain within 2 to 3 pounds, because remember, that's going to be inflammation, that's going to be digestion, that's going to be water retention, right? So as long as we're staying within 2 to 3 pounds of the weight that you bottomed out at, your goal weight, or whatever that is, right? And how we do that is we increase the calories by 50 to 100 per week. Most of my clients do really well if I increase them by 100 per week and then let their body catch up to that. And then you'll see it. Like it literally is just like, nope, I'm good. And then we add another 100 calories in and then we let them kind of figure that out. You can also increase your strength training because again, strength training, your metabolism is going to ask for that food. It's going to be like, give me that food. It's going to make you hungrier and your muscles will want that food. So whatever food that you're eating, as long as you're not getting crazy, it'll pull that insulin and it'll use it for repairing. So I like to increase strength training at that point. And then it's also a great opportunity to start practicing moderation with your nutrition and using the scale as feedback. So this is a good time to stop logging or spot check your logging. And then you step on the scale every day and just be like, okay, like did the scale, is the scale trending up? Okay, then that means I'm probably going too fast. Let me scale back down on my food a little bit or increase my activity a little bit. You're just using the scale as feedback so that you can move to a higher caloric intake without gaining the weight back. And that's the goal with moving into maintenance. So a couple words on the scale. Keep in mind that things that will affect the number on the scale are water retention, inflammation. A lot of people don't realize this, is that when you work out, if you have a good strength training session, your body is going to be inflamed. So it will affect the scale. I can tell you firsthand that it definitely happens, right? And digestion. If you eat later than you normally eat, like that banana that I had last night, 100%. That tiny little banana still affected the scale this morning. Didn't mean I jumped up 3 pounds, but was it probably half a pound heavier than it would have been had I not had the banana? Yeah, sure. It was at 2 o'clock in the morning and I weighed myself at like 6, right? So it will have an effect. Keep that in mind. That's why we want that 2 to 3 pound fluctuation. It is a tool that can be very helpful if you get the right mindset around it. It is not a measure of composition. And that is the difference between fat loss and weight loss. And I've been hearing lately on social media women that get on and say, The scale is not the best tool to measure weight loss. And my response to that is it's literally the only way that you can measure weight loss because the scale measures weight. It is not the best tool to measure body composition because you can, based on your body fat and your lean mass, look very different. So just know that it's not measuring your composition, it's just measuring weight, and get that in your head correctly. A word on tracking food. Again, I know it's not everybody's favorite thing to do, but you must be willing to look at what is in order to create what you want. If you have a hard time logging what you do over the weekend, it's like, oh, it was just too hard to log, right? It's like, no, it's not. You just don't want to put it down. You didn't want to put down that you had the pizza. You didn't want to put down, the whatever you ate. I'll see dinners missing sometimes. It's like, listen, like you have to be willing to look at what is in order to create what you want. It is not a time to bash yourself. You're a human being. I slip up. I pizza last Tuesday and it wasn't a small amount. Like, right? Like those things happen. It doesn't mean that I'm less of a person or I have no willpower. You can simply look at that as a tool, as I did, and go, okay, you pushed too hard. Like, let's back off. And then I was fine the rest of the week. So you want to be clinical versus critical, and also understand that it's a temporary tool. It doesn't have to be a lifestyle. I know that it is for a lot of women. It is not a lifestyle for me. It is a temporary tool. And quite honestly, you've done way harder things. It's not that hard to track food. When it comes to meal prep, I like the term batching versus prepping. I do not do the standard meal prepping where I take all of my Tupperware out and like create little meals. I like to batch, and it is an easier way for me to be able to manage my food. It is an easier way. So I basically just make sure I have 2 or 3 proteins. So like I'll grill some chicken, I'll grill some salmon. I make sure I have egg whites that I can make. I've got my protein powder, like I'll have my protein like there, and then I'll make sure that I have access to vegetables. So I have like spring mix and bagged salads, and then I'll oven roast like one vegetable. I'll have it ready to go. I've got berries, raspberries, blueberries ready to go. I've got apples ready to go. So I've got those ready. And then I always make sure I have a couple of starches. So it could be rice, it could be potatoes, it could be sweet potatoes, it could be gluten-free waffles, it could be gluten-free tortillas, right? Like I've got all of these things, and then I can just go, okay, like I literally just put them in a bowl or a wrap. I'm like, I'm going to do this meat, and then I'm going to do this vegetable, and I'm going to do this starch, and then this is going to be my condiment that I use that gives it, whether it's going to be more Mexican flavored or Asian or whether it's going to be Italian, right? Like then I can just add things to it to give it a certain flavor. So if you batch, it gives you options that you can add a little bit more variety instead of feeling like you're stuck to certain meals. Don't let perfection be the enemy of great. Again, we're not looking at perfection. If you are solid B plus performance on this, you will lose weight. You just have to be solid B. And most women aren't at first. So you just got to learn how to do that correctly. Time, you will never have the time to do this. You have to create it, just like you do with everything else that you want to do. You have to create that time. It will never work if you're trying to slide it in to the nooks and crannies of your life. You must create that time. You are already spending that time scrolling social media, wishing and wanting, worrying, self-loathing, all of those things. It's time that you're spending. You could just spend it actually doing the thing. And they used to say this before, and I'm going to say it now. If you don't spend the time now, I promise you, you will spend the time taking care of yourself later. And it's serious. It's serious. Look at the people around you who are aging and how well they're aging. Which version do you want to be? You get to choose. So, putting it all together, I wanted to introduce the fat loss formula. It is my brand new baby that I am launching. It is officially launching tomorrow. It is specifically for women in fat loss. It is to help you also be able to lose 10 pounds in 60 days and then use this system as a rinse and repeat if you have more than 10 pounds to lose. I'm literally going to show you how to go through the Lean Physique Ladder. It is an 8-week small group coaching program. FYI, this is a beta test. So the actual real deal program will get launched in 2025. I decided to do this as a beta test and make the investment like completely no-brainer, because I'm more interested in having a smaller, more intimate group, and I'm more interested in your feedback. Like that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for women who are going to get in here and actually do the thing and participate with the community and actually give me some feedback so that when I launch it in 2025, all the pieces are pulled together. So that is actually launching tomorrow. The beta test opportunity is basically 50% off the investment of what it's going to be in 2025. And as promised, I do have show up bonuses for you for being here today. So I don't know if you guys can even click on this link. If you can't, let me know if you're trying to do it. If you notice at the bottom there, there is a link. And during the length of this call, I'm going to let you get enrolled for the waitlist investment, which is $49 for the entire 8 weeks. I'm going to say that again. It's $49 for the entire 8 weeks. And here's what this includes. I'm only offering this through the end of this call. So if you're interested, I would jump in and start looking at it. If you can't access it with this link, let me know and I'll throw it. I wonder if I can throw it in a chat. Hold on, let me see. I just put it in the chat too. So if you're interested, you can take a look at it there. So how does it work? Number one, there's weekly coaching calls. It is the step-by-step Lean Physique Ladder. So we start each call with a focus for that week. The first week is going to be like, let's make sure that everybody has this hormonal balance. I'm going to give you those steps, one step at a time. Next week, we start to move into the other steps of the ladder. It's going to be nutrition based. It's going to be movement and exercise based. It's going to be hormones based, metabolic health. And then after that initial part of that call, I will open it up to Q&A to answer your questions. You're going to have struggles. You're going to have challenges. You're going to have things come up. You may have things come up that you don't want to ask, but someone else will ask it and you'll get those answers. You learn a lot by listening to others. It's one of the favorite things that I've always learned with any kind of mastermind or coaching that I've done. I don't always ask the questions, but I listen to the questions that are being asked. And I'm like, oh yeah, I have that problem too. Or I'm just looking at the answers so that I know like, how does this all come together? So I will be like literally answer these questions and helping you as you go through this little by little. There is also a membership site. Inside that membership site, all of the coaching calls and the recordings get uploaded in there. So if you can't catch them, you will have access to those calls. You also get lifetime access to the membership site. I forgot to put that on there. So once you're in, you're in. You have it for that rinse and repeat. Inside the membership site, there's a ton of resources in there, guys. There's a lot in there. I wanted to keep it very simple, but there's a lot. There is an entire meal plan bundle so that I can help you customize your nutrition. I do not believe in one size fits all. I want to give you the resources that help you be successful, but there is a preference, right, that you are going to have. And there's also going to be individuality in how food works for you. So I'm going to help you map this out so that you have a meal plan that works for you. There are workouts in there so that once we get past that initial movement, you have a beginner program. And I also have a beginner to intermediate to an intermediate program that you'll have access to. I will help you with lifestyle management. So the resources inside this membership are things that you will be able to use ongoing. And then one of the most important aspects is the private community. And this is where we are all together going to be moving towards the same goal. Environment matters. It matters so much. And I always use the example of CrossFit. I don't know if you guys have ever paid attention to CrossFit, whether you like CrossFit and the workouts and the idea of it or not. Here's what I can tell you is that it's genius in that community, like if you think about it, CrossFitters do that workout together in that environment. How many people who do CrossFit will do those workouts on their own? Very few. Unless they are an elite athlete, they will not do the workouts on their own. They need the community. Most women do not have an environment that supports transformation. You are a product of your environment. Having a private community helps create an environment that supports your transformation. So you have women in there sharing their wins, sharing their challenges, rooting you on, getting results. When other when other you see other women getting results, guess what you do? You dig in, right? So they're all along with you, personally jumping, and I'll be in there jumping in to help you with tips and inspiration to help keep you going. So it is a community that supports your transformation. And then the last aspect is you do have an option for a VIP jump start. It is a private coaching call with me where I will customize and troubleshoot whatever issues you're having. We'll look at nutrition, we'll look at your total daily energy expenditure, we'll look at your tracker, we're going to look at hormones if we need to, we're going to look at lifestyle concerns, and I'm going to help you customize your jump start so that you know have exactly what you need in order to be successful. And that is included for that jumpstart option. You can add it on at the checkout if you're looking for that. So fat loss formula is for you if you are an action taking midlife woman. This is not a diet, guys. I'm not going to just teach you how to slash calories. You have to be willing to take action. You have to have the ability to create the time to fully participate in this. It does not mean perfection, but if you can't create that time to take care of yourself, it won't work. So don't sign up if you don't have the ability to do that. You need to be willing to engage in the community and provide feedback. That's why I'm doing it at this investment right now, because that's what I'm looking for. And you are just done with the scale not moving, and you are ready to do something about it. So the doors for enrollment are going to close next Tuesday. That is when we are going to have our first coaching call that evening. It will be at 5:30 p.m. Pacific time. And again, because I've got